Welcome to Bald Move Pulp, the officially unofficial podcast for all of the Loki talk. I'm Jim.
I'm A.Ron.
And we're back. I think one more time here for the season finale of Loki called Glorious Purpose.
Which is the name of the pilot episode of Loki.
Yes, which is a nice little that's a nice little happenstance there.
We've arrived at the part of the series where the snake's teeth are touching its ass.
Yes.
This is where we're at. The Ouroboros is consuming itself. I'm curious to start. Since you were left cold by last episode, I don't know if my explanation of hero logic got you any more prepared for this episode, but I gotta say I was worried for you while I was watching this episode. How did you find the climax of Loki season 2? Maybe the series itself.
Yeah, in all likelihood, it feels like a very series
very
finale kind of
episode. I don't think they're done with Loki, but I feel like Loki is at a nice stash point for him to be retrieved at some point in a multiversal war.
Sure,
where
this
things
version
look
of
grim.
Loki is here forever.
You can have the Norse god of time come off his throne and whip some ass.
Perhaps. So here's the thing. I'm super torn on this episode because I think what they're going for, they fucking nailed it. It's like the perfect resolution to the thing that they were obviously trying to do the past couple of seasons. For my sci-fi nerd brain, this is very dissatisfying because none of it had a logical conclusion at all. It turns out, he's just a god and he can do whatever he wants. Emotionally, I think like the stuff really resonates. It's about a character who has extreme power. He's always used it for evil. And he is now set to a point where he has to choose between two bad things. And he has to make a sacrifice. He has to lose again, but this time he's losing in a context that he feels good about. And I think the way they orchestrated all that coming together was pretty stellar.
Yeah, and when you think about it in the context of a larger history of the character, how they were unwinding the events of the first Thor movie, that, Loki there, his brother destroyed a bridge to keep him from destroying a world, and his father offers him peace and reconciliation, and Loki throws himself off that broken bridge rather than submit. Mm-hmm. And in this, he destroys a bridge to save a world and then steps off the end and ascends to a higher plane to save his friends. It's like, it's extremely narratively, mechanically, intellectually satisfying. I was really impressed when he destroyed the sacred timeline and then rebraided all the timelines with his might as an Asgardian god and frost giant and his mastery of magic and now time and space, and he refashioned it in the form of the Norse world tree, Yggdrasil, I think is how you pronounce that thing. Like when they rotated that to where it looked like the world tree again, which I think has been destroyed in the Loki, the prime timeline. I think all those like that shit got all destroyed in the events of Thor Ragnarok. That he's recreated it as something that's uniquely kind of Asgardian, and he's put himself, like, the last thing he wants is a throne, and now he's got the throne where everything runs through it, and he didn't want to be alone, but he will be alone forever because he loves his friends that much. That shit just really plays so well. But I don't know why it did not connect emotionally with me at all. Like, I wish I knew where he was going with the world tree. Because, like, for 5 minutes, from the second that he got done with the last conversation with, like, He Who Remains to where he came back and like, he's doing something. Yeah. And I was just, like, sitting there, like, what the fuck is he doing? What the fuck is he doing? And, like, I'm like, what? Like, because this is almost, okay, clearly I'm not like Jim. I will go along with some sci-fi fantasy bullshit, with the comic book rules and all that. But I'm like, when he's walking up this invisible staircase wearing these Gucci slippers, I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, we have this is like some really, and when I started realizing what they were going for and what they did, That first time, I really did not like this episode. The first time I watched it, and like that was just it, and we had this kind of like short denouement, and it's like this very melancholy end. The second time, and I started noticing all of the internal references they made to the Loki's character, and to the entire series and his start, and I felt like maybe they could have made some of those things more explicit to help people see where they're getting to before they got there. But I don't know, maybe they're trying to be clever and they won. I just like this just didn't emotionally connect. The way last week I was like moved to tears. I felt like I should have been there with like Loki, looking at.
The problem is you don't know what's happening. Like you don't know where
You're
it's
right.
headed, right? You need it didn't. Here's the thing. It's very emotional. It's extremely emotional. And intellectually looking back on it, I understand that all the emotional pieces are there and connect really well, but my heart was not feeling it in the scenes. I'm with you. It's because I don't know what his ultimate goal is here, that he is sacrificing himself in this moment. I don't feel the anguish that I should feel.
Yeah. Because I'm just trying to figure, and like again, it works better for me in the second time, but it's just like one of those things where it's like,
because you already know, but
I
when you
can't
don't
relate to what it's like to sit on a time throne and watch all of the threads of time weave, and I find my friends out of the infinite cosmos and just watch them from time to time with tears in my eyes. Like to be a living eternal martyr. Like this is like almost biblical. This is like Christ continually offering his body as a sacrifice before God's throne. This is Warhammer, the Emperor of Man sacrificing himself for all of eternity to keep from the demons from eating the galaxy. This is like so archetypal and young that I just like I greatly admired what they did intellectually and with the character and thematically and universally. I think that's super cool. But it felt like, I prefer last week's end where, and maybe I just don't want this to be for Loki. I don't want Loki to be in this end. And then the other thing is, like, if I'm being super honest,
one Loki. Yeah.
If I'm being super honest, I kind of wanted Loki and Sylvie to get together because I'm a big shipper and I just wanted to see they're cute and I wanted to see but like I think that is way off this show's radar. I don't think they were ever trying to go in that direction. And there's a little bit of disappointment there. But since I felt like the emotional climax of the show happened last week. The other thing is, full disclosure, I saw one of the biggest heart movies I've seen in my whole fucking life. The Holdovers with Paul Giamatti last night.
Yeah,
this almost perfect Christmas film that completely connected to me on every level. And maybe I just was that shit was burnt out. Where
Paul
dopamine.
Giamatti turns into Idrisil and connects heavens and the earth in a boys' school.
And it's like maybe if I had seen this the day before, because I literally got done with a smile on my face podcasting with you last night, and I jumped on my couch and I sat down to watch Loki, and almost immediately I just like I wasn't connecting. And but then I remembered the time where we went to see Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that's like the best movie I'd ever seen for like several years. And then we came home and we watched the Severance finale, and that was just as amazing. And like both of the it's like I don't know if I buy the theory that the Holdovers drained me for. I just think that this didn't quite connect with me.
And you can do this grand scale. I mean, look at Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you want to see like a grand, epic, crazy tale that connects emotionally, that movie is amazing on
and
all
kept
levels.
kept connecting as it worked through its multiple kind of layers of ending and stuff. It's like, I definitely
gotta be because you know the stakes, right? You know what's happening at any given moment, and you know why characters are doing and what they're doing. And I think there's something about this finale that when you look back on it, it's very satisfying from a like moving parts kind of perspective. But it's not super satisfying in the moment as an emotionally connected viewer.
Yeah, even down to like the more I think about the parallels to the first Thor, the more intellectually I find it satisfying. Because like there's the symmetry of Thor destroying the Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, so that Loki couldn't destroy the Jotunheim, the Frost Giant realm, and doing that also stranded Thor from Jane. Because there is no more connection to Earth. He's not going to be able. So it's like he sacrificed his relationship, and I felt like in a very similar way, Loki severing his relationship with Sylvie and being, eternally alone. Like there's like, again, god damn, these people did their homework. and they nailed it. But
Yes.
I can't help what my endocrine system's doing when I'm watching it, and it wasn't doing nothing.
That's the thing. It's also possible I'm just a broken human being, because I see when I'm reading around people's reactions, a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, I was weeping at this part. And I'm like, great for you. I'm glad you connected with it.
It does feel like, so I guess there's a plot line, a classic Loki plot line, where he becomes the guy, he ceases becoming the god of mischief and becomes the god of stories, which I was not familiar with. And I felt like everyone that used the, like, oh, he finally became the god of stories, did emotionally connect with it, because but I don't know. Maybe they knew where this was going, and they were, because I spent so much of this episode just confused. I was frequently entertained. Like, I thought the Jonathan Majors spaghettification montage was really funny to Beethoven's Fifth. I really liked that. I really liked Tom doing his like Bill Murray Groundhog Day.
Dude, centuries later, right? Like that caption alone delighted me. I'm like, yes, this is what a god's experience would be. What is a few centuries to me?
But when we got to like Jonathan Majors freezing time and starting to have these architect types, and I'm like, I was just lost and confused. And then by the time I realized where they were going, there was like 20 minutes this episode, right? Where I was just like, what? And it felt like it was over so fast.
By the time the emotion kicks in, I'm like, oh, that's what's happening, and we're on to the denouement. I'm like, oh. I kind of wanted to know what he was doing so I could feel it with him. But I was just still trying to figure it out till the moment he sits on that throne, you know?
Yeah, and like, I don't know, maybe this is what if you don't catch the third step of the Martin reveal, like
yeah, maybe I'm like the dummy out here.
Yeah, I could just be just super dumb, and I feel like I let a lot of people down, because I was, the people saying, yeah, I get it, and explaining it and all that kind of. But like, yeah, this episode, I find it also, it's like,
right, it's not like I wasn't getting it. I was seeing all the pieces coming together. I'm looking at it and going, yes, this is expertly crafted. But
the layers of just all the stuff you had to go through to get there, in terms of like, the technobabble and the but like, again, like, everyone has their breaking point, and I felt like a lot of that was like, yeah, when he's just grabbing strands and making them green, and I'm just like, what? Because like, how is this
to sit in it?
Yeah, like, and then like, I think there's a lot of, on second watch, I'm like, you just have to understand that this is a Loki that's burnt oceans of time to hone, and like, he's got emergent properties of his godhood now that we didn't even know at the end of last episode he could do. Mm-hmm. Like, we went beyond, like, he's like arguably beyond Kang, or on Kang's level of, and like, I felt like that stuff happened really fast. But also, when I think back, I was like, well, he spent centuries learning. He already had like an intuitive understanding of the world, and now he's got like a practical nuts and bolts, like Reed Richards level, Doctor Doom level, Iron Man level of understanding of these. So it's like, and he's had centuries to perfect it, and like, God knows, millennia to like try and like, and he's just ascended. Like, it makes perfect sense. It just, I don't know what it's like to do that, and I didn't know what it's like to be that person. Like, it's almost like I feel like he should be a lot more Dr. Manhattan at the end.
Yeah, like just completely detached from all of this.
Like he has become a cosmic constant in the universe. He has become time. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I could be, if this god of stories, maybe that makes a lot more sense if I understood that storyline.
Yeah, I just wish I was given more time to sit in it once I realized what happened. Just be there with Loki, feeling his emotion. But really, it was like, okay, he's climbing these stairs, he's touching these things. What is these timelines? What is he doing with these?
Yeah,
is he trying to find the one that's the sacred timeline and revive just that one for them
without all
the temporal loom?
Yeah.
What is he doing? And by the time he sits on that throne and gathers them up in a bunch and becomes, a deific temporal loom himself, I'm like, okay, I get it. And then we're on to the next part. And I'm like, that's a big moment for this character. It's huge. And I didn't feel like we were given time to really be with that moment. Whereas, like, I look back to the Holdovers, and there is a speech at the end that Paul Giamatti gives, and it lasts for a minute and a half. And at the very beginning of that, I know exactly where that speech is going, and I feel like I'm right there with him through the whole speech, right? I wasn't with Loki on this staircase climb. I was outside of it trying to figure it out.
None of his friends knew what he was doing either. Like, they had somebody saying he's giving us a chance, but like, How the fuck did you know that? Maybe I guess she's using her Asgardian juice too to kind of like intuit it, but like, yeah, it's like I felt like everyone was left out of the resolution there except for Loki, and you just kind of, again, I admire it. I really do. I admire it. And I will say that this is,
yeah, I bet it's amazing. I didn't get a chance to watch it twice.
The problem with this second watch is there's a fatal flaw of this episode that makes subsequent watches have a problem. I don't know, maybe it's just me again, but like I will say that like I think this is clear in a way, far head and shoulders above anything else Disney Plus has been able to do. Like this is the best Marvel series they've ever done, bar none. This is their Andor, except for like I think Andor's flaw, if it had one, was it started off a little slow. Whereas Loki, it's like its flaws, like it kept on expanding the technobabble, and to where it seemed like its mission was to find everyone's like comic book breaking point, and the only ones that survive to the end are the ones, the strong, Stan Lee's strongest soldiers.
Yeah, who God of stories folks.
Yeah, who've won all the no prizes, and they have a full. They're like Loki sitting on the throne of Marvel continuity and holding it all together through them. Because I thought I was that guy.
For those people.
I'm not that guy, apparently.
Look, I'm not the guy who made it through last episode going, yeah, this all makes sense to me and feels right. So this episode was just off the map for me. And I just had to at some point say, I'm turning my science brain off, and I'm going with the emotional story that they're telling. And I think they told a really strong one. I am curious to see if I watch this a second time, if I am feeling the emotion that Loki is feeling in those moments.
So, like I said, I think it's the most successful Disney Plus thing that they've ever done, and is like an A- at worst, and an A+ going into the season for this episode for me. And also, it feels like Loki is positioned exactly where they want him to be. Like, I don't think there'll be a Loki season 3 for a while, but like he clearly is going to play a part in this multiversal war that they got planned. And they can pull him out anytime they want. But he's like, it's just hard to imagine without him going through some kind of God of War style depowering that he could be a plausible character. Like the reunion with Thor, like he's like, he's shot past Odin. Like, who does he relate to? You know,
no one. I think this character is done. I think this character just sits at the core of the universe. They're holding the timelines together, and different variants of Loki will show up.
Yeah, he sacrificed all of his humanity to pull this off. It felt like to me. Mm-hmm. So, but like, and like I said, I guess I was really hoping for a happy ending for Loki. But also, how do you give this Loki a happy ending? You know,
I think that's one of the best things about it is there is no happy ending for him, right? It is a lose-lose situation. He either loses all the timelines or he loses his own free will and autonomy, and like he makes that call to give other people hope. I think it's perfect.
It's very Christ-like, that he sacrificed himself so that others can live and be happy.
And it also feels like this was all part of the He Who Remains plan. Like, he was done sitting on this throne. I'm tired of this. I don't want to be alone in this end of time anymore. And so I'm going to force Loki into a situation where he has to become me, and he can take this job over, you know?
Yeah, that might hold together, actually.
It might.
Because I was thinking that Loki subverted it. That like maybe this was time, but he was like from the perspective like I'll always end up here. It'll just be a different version of me that, you know. And then Loki's like, nope, I'm actually gonna, like I'm gonna destroy their loom and the sacred timeline and make something better from it. But
isn't he just like I said, a deific temporal loom? Isn't he just doing the same job that He Who Remains was doing with the loom?
Well, we should probably get into the episode to talk about it.
Yeah, we probably should.
Or just fuck the outline and just keep doing the meta discussion. But
we could. I mean, that's what people really want to hear, right?
Here. Yeah.
I will say this intro surprised me. It didn't feel like it was themed, but I don't know how you would theme it according to this episode, because all the others felt very theme heavy.
Well, the Marvel logo played backwards. That was the theming.
No, but the music, it was just like, seemed like a pretty generic hip hop style track.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what are you going to do for a musical theme? And it didn't make any more sense by the end. I was looking for it. So we start off with Loki at the moment before Timely goes out to stop the loom from overloading, and he asks Obi what they could have done differently. Apparently they just took too long. The radiation got too high. So that seems like a problem Loki's equipped to solve. He tries over and over and over again to get Timely out of the loom, but they're not fast enough. And then he says, this might go faster if I knew everything about physics and mechanics and engineering that Obi does. How long would that take? And they replied, centuries. Let's leave it there for a second.
Yeah, this is essentially George Loki comes into the set like George Lucas and just says faster, more intense. That's what this whole sequence is. Yep. Like you just, it's kind of funny the way he is just. Who's going to do it? You are the one that volunteers. Just puts his hands on his shoulder and steers him through all this. And like I said, the spaghetti montage with him just again, and like, Victor Timely getting spaghettified. I thought that was really funny. And then when it got to the Groundhog Day, where it's like, Loki's then, before you go out there, make sure you put duct tape on your left shoulder, your right knee, and your faceplate, or
don't set the thing down or roll off the platform. Make sure you latch his helmet, all that stuff that we get to later.
Yeah, and then this is as all in as Loki's ever been on anything. Yeah, like he's going to take literally centuries to learn something he probably considers boring mortal bullshit. Because this is the only way he can goose it any faster. If he jumps in and rolls up his sleeves and does the dirty work himself. There
are 2 points in this episode where I'm going to complain with my sci-fi.
I have a complaint myself too.
This is a huge one. This is like just on the face of it ridiculous. I don't know why they don't do this, but why can't Loki jump back to the time where Mobius goes out? Stop time there, right? Like at the end of this, he could jump back to when Mobius goes out. He could go get Victor Timely. He could send Victor Timely out instead with his multiplier. He could shoot into the loom. Everything's fine. None of this is a problem. You don't have to outpace the radiation. You just need him putting the multiplier in.
That's my exact same problem. It's not clear to me whether, was Victor Timely from a timeline variant that doesn't exist anymore?
No, he's from
he can only jump.
He's from the 1800s. Like,
yeah, but from which timeline? The sacred timeline or when the variants? So it's like there might be a time.
I think he's on the sacred timeline.
I'm with you. I'm just this is my only way to be like, well, maybe I didn't follow what they're doing, but
it doesn't matter. They have the time doors. They can go to any branch. They can go to any time in any branch and pick up anybody they want. I mean, that's the whole point of the time doors.
Yeah. No, I was trying to play devil's advocate, but honestly, I don't. That was a problem I had too. It's like, well, now that he's, especially when you get to the end of the episode, he's such a master of time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I thought, okay, maybe I can excuse this by the temporal pattern that they mentioned last episode, right? Maybe he can only go to this one point in time, but then later in the episode, you see him going to various times. So go back to the source of this problem, which was when Mobius tried to expand it, it didn't work.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a huge problem with this episode, with my sci-fi brain.
Yes, I agree. I don't know what the answer is, because I will say that even with the hero can do anything as long as he's good. It does help if those powers and manifestations he has is a natural outcrop of what they already can do. It's just like it could be like adjacent or. The same kind, just different intensities, but it's weird if the go fast guy can shoot lightning bolts from his fingertips,
Right. You want ideally to be like, oh, I didn't think about him using the power that way.
Yeah, moving so fast your molecules can vibrate through
Sure.
If the guy who can project cold can secretly also reduce heat, because I've seen Iceman save a burning building because it's all really about pumping heat. It's not about ice, and I can pump the heat out of this location. And it's like, oh yeah, that's fucking cool.
That makes sense. Yeah,
it's a new wrinkle of your toolkit. But some of the stuff that they were happening there, it's like. Not only did it feel like it was completely novel uses of the power, but also the mastery that he had gotten in the previous thing should have let him come up with a better solution.
Yes,
to the problem at hand. But it's
this is always a problem with time travel stories. Like,
especially Marvel when
they're
it goes
so fucking tricky.
and they get really loosey-goosey in Marvel, and
Yeah.
and like, you know, they did the thing in Endgame where it's just like the Hulk looks at you and says, don't think too hard about this, and it's like, it's tough when the entire text and subtext is about the thing they're trying to, like, don't think too hard about. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm doing
And
it.
they're going for two very big swings here. One is that emotional swing of how are they going to connect everything back character-wise to this heightened emotion that you want to feel at the end of this. And they're swinging for the fences on time travel stuff this season. And those are both individually hard enough to pull off. Together, yeah, it's tough.
There's also something I like that they're foreshadowing, like, you know, Loki losing his humanity to save his friends, because, like, as he's desperately trying to save his friends, he's losing connection with them.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
all the easy chemistry thing. It's like he's got this, like, very forced artificial version of it, where it's like he's not, like, you know, when Owen Wilson's like, oh, someone's coming for your job, OB, this, like, bid for camaraderie. Like, Loki doesn't ignore it like Dr. Manhattan would, but he does, like ha ha ha, yeah, he, like, completes everyone's jokes and,
Yeah.
like, come on, back on task, guys. And it's like, I felt that
He's
on
using
second
them as
rewatch.
tools.
Yeah, on second rewatch, I found that, like, very sad.
Yeah.
That, you know, he's trying so desperately to save his friends, and these are his last moments. He's spending centuries with these people, but he's not enjoying it, and it's, like, made the sacrifice that much more acute.
This is like when they tell Mobius, when he tells Mobius, like, we can bring you back to this time. It'll be like you never left, right? That's what's going on in his mind. Once I solve this problem, we can get back to being the friends that we have been. But for now, I need them to just be tools that I use to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, he'll have spent all that time, and by the end of it, he's not going back to his friends. So,
Yeah.
we're going to go centuries later now. He's learned everything he needs to know to get the loom fixed, and he sends Timely back out. And Timely struggles down the gangway and eventually launches the multiplier. It looks like it's going to work. It stabilizes the timelines. Unfortunately, the loom starts overloading again. Hypothetically, according to them, because there are an infinite number of branches, and it's scaling infinitely, meaning they could never have stopped it from overloading. This is another problem I have. So most of my problems are front loaded.
Okay. We're back synced, because I think I got the same problem you've got. What is it?
Well, okay, it's probably twofold here. A, I think someone who has a intimate understanding of mechanics and engineering, and especially physics, if this is actually a problem, should have understood that it was a problem before, and realized that they couldn't actually fix this loom if that was always the case.
Yeah, right?
You're not a master of physics unless you understand the nature of infinity. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And B, the loom worked at some point. Did it not? The TVA pruned. There is a way to contain this quote-unquote infinite scaling problem because they were doing it.
Well, it's the infinite scaling is you prune so you don't have infinite. You never let the branches grow into infinity. You keep them finite. But
well, then you go back to that system. Like, it was working.
That kills trillions of people.
Sure, but if Loki's goal is to maintain something, maintain that sacred timeline at least, if that's not better than nothing, then you go back to that system.
But Sylvie wouldn't go along with it, so he would lose one of his friends. Because Sylvie sees.
But at the end, he's okay. At the end, he comes to Sylvie and he's like, "Well, what's better? What's worse, having a sacred timeline or having nothing?" He's resigned himself to that. So why didn't he go back and just reestablish the TVA?
Because he didn't say that. What he actually said at the end is like, I have to replace it. Why destroy everything?
Well, that's at the very end.
Replace it with something.
That's after she's convinced him that that's not the way to go. But his heart was set when he goes to her in the first place.
Yeah, he tries to.
His heart was set on just maintaining the one timeline.
But then she set before him a dilemma. Like, okay, fine, but you'll have to kill me. Because there's nothing you can say to the past version of me. Like, even now in the future, where I see the wisdom of what you're saying, I'm still telling you there's nothing you can tell that Sylvie that's going to not have her kill he who remains. So you're going to have to kill her. And I'm not giving you my blessing. Because from my perspective, I'd rather fight and die in a war that I can't win and then be dead than to keep living in this garish system of no free will and slavery.
So what you're saying is at the beginning of that scene, that was his plan. He was just going to kill
Yes,
her and let
he
the
wanted-
one timeline exist, and then she convinced
Well,
him
I think
in
he
that
wanted
one
to stop.
moment.
He was never going to kill her, but he wanted to find a way to stop her, and that was like the other groundhog sequence of them fighting. He could never.
I know he refused to kill her, but then there was a discussion with He Who Remains that I thought had changed his mind and showed him how inevitable all this was.
All right, I feel like we've aired your problems adequately.
Yeah. What's yours?
Here's another one on top of this. It used to be on this show that Sylvie and Loki had a partnership and like a yin and yang and like, you know, two broken halves of the same individual thing going on, and they collaborated to work together. I didn't like down the stretch where it just became the Loki show. Like Sylvie just wasn't as good as Loki. Sylvie wasn't able to keep up with Loki. Sylvie wasn't able to understand the things Loki did, and she didn't have the mastery that he did. And it's like, it wasn't clear to me why they couldn't make this more of a partnership. But except for they wanted Tom on the throne at the end to be alone.
Sure.
But it's like, that felt very writerly to me. And it felt like the huge dynamic that worked in the first season of the show, which is the relationship between Loki and Sylvie, that all got shelved to just make Loki to become the time god. And I get it. Again, I admire it, but like that's one of the reasons it didn't really connect with me, is because I was expecting, you know, once we got Sylvie back, she was going to become bigger and bigger, and it was going to be a true partnership, and it just wasn't. It was the Loki show, which it is his name on the title, so
yeah. And she does give him the final piece of the puzzle that tells him what he needs to do. So there's like a little bit of a one Loki helping another Loki there, but I feel you. She felt very minor in the overall plot this season.
Yeah. But I also like the idea that like Loki couldn't stop her without killing her. But that's the other thing is that also just, I don't know. I don't know if I like the idea of like Sylvie fundamentally being weaker than Loki, because like that's like the thing is like, well, I could kill you at any time and I could stop you. Could you? How? You know?
Well, he's a time god now, so he could just freeze time and kill her.
Yeah, he's just like way more powerful than her.
Before that, I don't know.
Yeah. But but what he can't do is he can't change her mind. He can't take her free will out, and that's what he's going to need to, you know, either kill her or take her free will, and he's not willing to do either of those things.
Nope. Which turns out is probably good because he preserves free will for everybody else. I don't know.
I will say that goes. On multiple rewatches, this entire portion of the episode becomes very tedious because it's like watching Groundhog Day multiple times in a row, which I've done. It's like, you're already retreading through scenes that we've already seen, and you're doing them faster and more intense. But the fact that like all of the first like 20 minutes of this episode, the first third of this episode, is a literal waste of time. Watching that with that knowledge is a little rough. You know, like maybe if you sat this on a shelf and watched it a year from now, you wouldn't realize that. But like watching it and 24 hours later, watching it again, and be like, okay, what I was like, oh my God, these first 20 minutes is just something I want to fast forward through. That's not good.
And even the small, I think the jokes in this are much smaller, much more like kind of jokes as opposed to laugh out loud jokes in previous episodes.
I agree.
Even those jokes are tied to the fact that he's speed running this whole fix, and on second watch, I can imagine that being very
like everybody like, what's Loki doing? This Loki's acting weird. And
whereas before, like, it was entertaining just watching Obi, and I could go back and watch him a dozen times, and it'd probably be hilarious every time.
And there was a couple things, like I thought I really got a kick out of Victor Timely exclaiming pumpkins when he won. I thought it was fucking hilarious. And then I really thought that Tom did good work where, you know, Loki like closed his eyes, like with tears in his eyes, like finally. Like that line landed, because I was like, okay, yes. He's spent perhaps thousands of years of his immortal life doing this extremely frustrating, un-Loki thing. Because he loves his friends that much.
Yeah, those moments definitely connected. This whole sequence really made me feel, I don't know, because what is a few centuries to a god? It's nothing. It's like a blink for me, right? It's less than a blink. If you have an infinite life, then it is infinitesimal a few centuries in your life. So like what does it matter to him? Why does a few centuries matter? But I felt it as a human being watching this going, wow, he spent centuries doing this over and over and over and learning everything he needed to know. That was a huge undertaking. And I felt his frustration and I felt his joy when it finally went into the loom.
Yeah.
And then his devastation when it turns out, oh, that actually didn't work at all. We're totally
while
screwed.
Loki was
nothing.
still relatably human, I was connecting with him. Yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing we could do all along. And you would also think that Obi, being a master of physics, would understand the infinite nature of this problem, but whatever. Turn my science brain off. Let's just go with the emo brain, and let's do the rest.
They're
of this
going real
episode.
fast, man. They're building models.
True.
They're just so they wanted to make that loom bigger, and they did, but they never thought they can't make it infinitely big.
Yeah, but couldn't you just make it? Yeah. All right.
But
Loki,
that's the problem. And then the loom is specifically designed not to do that thing.
Yes.
Like it's designed to, and that's
we'll find out later.
Victor. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Loki goes back to the moment at the end of time before Sylvie kills He Who Remains and tells her to stop because it all ends if she kills him. But she won't stop, so they fight a whole bunch. And she succeeds in killing He Who Remains over and over and over again. And Loki's like, why aren't you fighting back? What, did you want to say something?
I just said I really like this. This is what I call the "See You Soon" montage, where I thought that was pretty increasingly creepy and effective. Jonathan Majors and "See You Soon" every time he died.
Yeah, I love all the reveals in this scene where, after the fighting stops and he's like, why won't you fight back here? He pauses Sylvie, he pauses time on her, and then disappears her so that they could talk alone. And he talks frankly about the time slipping with Loki, revealing that it was all part of his plan all along. And he explains to Loki that the temporal loom is actually a failsafe that when it overloads, it deletes everything except the sacred timeline. And Loki decides, I need to break the loom, and thereby, I guess, allowing the war that destroys all the timelines, and hoping that he can do something to stop that, I guess.
I think that tracks, that he is going to keep a watch on the timeline to make sure injustice is not high for some reason. And then the TVA's new purpose is constantly looking after and neutralizing Kang variants.
Yeah, I love that. I love that thing at the end where now they're not pruning timelines. They're just making sure that He Who Remains doesn't get out of hand and go start a multiversal war.
Yeah. And
that's
now
cool.
the problem with that is it's like one of those things where it's like, but they say this on The Wire, like the advantage that cops have over the criminals is like the cops can make mistakes and screw up all the time. And it's, next day they can, just try again to catch you. But the crook can only screw up once. And then they're done. Yeah. I feel like that's what the TVA is like. You only need one. Yeah, you have to do your job perfectly every day. Kang only has to get lucky once.
Here's the thing about that too. They still have the same damn scaling problem. Like now it's just a manpower thing instead of a temporal loom thing, right? Like you cannot. There are an infinite number of timelines spinning off at an infinite rate. How do you have the manpower to infinitely prune all or infinitely watch all of the Victor Timeleys, all of the He Remains?
They're definitely going with the layman's understanding of infinity, where it's like
infinity's infinity. God damn it!
If you have two finite numbers and you keep multiplying them, eventually you'll get infinity. And if you divide infinity in half, then you broke it into two manageable. That's not how infinity works.
Two halves of infinity are just two infinities. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah. And you can't have a finite numbers that you add up to get infinity. But I feel like Marvel's like, as long as we keep nipping it in the bud, they won't become infinity. But I
love the idea,
ridiculous.
But I had turned my infinity brain off to swallow it.
Yeah. But it's another one. It's like where it's like, okay, woof, this is just not what these words mean. But again, I don't know why I rolled with it last week and I didn't roll it.
Well, it's because they use that as a concept to say we can't fix this problem, and then they roll that back and use the same term to describe something that's exactly the same, but they can't.
Because either Loki is purging timelines through the world tree,
Sure.
or somehow the TVA with finite resources is managing an infinite problem.
Maybe it's both. I don't know. He's attacking it at one end, they're attacking it at the other.
He just purchased the bad timelines.
Sure. Yeah, those people are all bad. Everybody in that timeline was rotten. Let's get rid of that one.
I mean, in an infinite universe,
there's
probably a timeline where just everyone's a shitter. Like any objective
there would be
outside
an infinite number of
like,
those.
Yeah, there's an infinite number of shitter things that have to be purged. No, it's literally immoral to allow them to continue. You know?
Yeah. And I guess like all of that is band-aided over by just saying, well, Loki's a god, right? He's outside of time. He has godlike. He doesn't even have godlike powers. He is a god. So, yeah. I don't know, man. I just stopped thinking about it in that respect at some point. But yeah, I was curious about He Who Remains plan. This is where I really started thinking about it. Okay, when he decided, or when he said in season 1, like, this is the point beyond which I can't see, is that because his particular variant wasn't going to survive this and he knew that he had a plan in place to set himself back up to be the new variant? And Loki was a part of that, right? It was always part of it. Or was this a plan for him to get out of the position he's in once and for all and have Loki take it over?
It's very hard for me because they have a chicken and egg problem here where it's like, when did the He Who Remains throw the timeline into the loom? Because it's like I don't know what the universe looked like before that happened. But post the loom, it seems like his plan is, yes, if anything happens to me or my TVA, they'll have they'll have like, unless you continue purging something under some, like, you have to purge something. You don't have to purge the other Kang timelines, but if you don't, you're going to have a multiversal war destroy everything, number one. Number two, if you do, if you stop purging, then the loom will explode and constrict things down to the sacred timeline, which makes him inevitable. Because this Kang is from the sacred timeline.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's a little bit of, like, the Matrix. It's a little bit of Agent Smith. It's a little bit inevitable, you know? And Loki is Neo. It's saying, no, I'm going to blow this shit up and then... Yeah, I'm not gonna be you at the end of time with the sacred time. I'm gonna be, you know, Odin at the foot of the world tree. You know.
Sure.
Like I said, it kind of
do something
works.
better. Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those optical illusions where if I set it down and look this side and that side, everything looks super solid. But when I'm walking from the one viewpoint to the other, I can see that, like, oh, this is where. But like I said, I can't fully explain my lack of emotional connection to this material, especially since so many others did, like, you know, connect with it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. Let's go to the next part of this, where Loki is transported back to his initial interview with Mobius, who's trying to figure out what makes Loki tick. And Loki asks Mobius, how you choose who lives and dies. And, of course, Mobius says, oh, well, we abide by the proper flow of time that the timekeepers determine, and then tells Loki a story about the consequences of hesitating even for a moment to kind of stick to their purpose. And he tells Loki, there's no comfort in anything. You just choose your burden. This is super interesting because I think this connects back to what you were saying just a moment ago in the last scene. He Who Remains kind of, at the end of this, becomes that boy that needed to be pruned, right? Yeah, okay, you don't need to prune entire timelines. That would be the scenario here that he describes of not pruning the boy and 5,000 people die, or like it gets out of hand and now we lose a bunch of agents and have to prune him anyway. That would be pruning entire timelines, but they're going in and they're precisely pruning the boy, the He Who Remains of the situation.
They're not even pruning him, they're just not giving him the TVA guidebook.
Oh, they would prune him if he got out of hand, but yeah, so far
they're trying to suppress. But that's not free. But I don't know. That's where it's like, this is the ultimate bootstrap paradox.
In what way?
Well, like, it seems like unless you give Victor Timely, when he's 8 years old, this handbook, then Kang doesn't arrive.
And none of this ever happens, yeah.
If Kang didn't do that himself, set that in motion...
Right.
then what the fuck did?
Yeah. I mean, this is something they've been playing with all season, right? Like Victor Timely inspiring Obi, who inspired Victor Timely. Yeah, it's all
like this would have worked
stuff.
a lot better if they had implied that no one had the knowledge of Loki's sacrifice. If he literally started a new timeline where like this Loki never existed because he's outside of time. Mm-hmm. And Kang never existed because he never got like we fundamentally went back and we broke the paradox. But it's like it's weird that they're like aware of Loki and aware of Kang, who should have never existed because Loki remade the universe. Like I said, it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like
15 years of Marvel stuff entirely. Wouldn't that be like?
Well, that's
you don't need to know any of that. Just go watch Loki season 1 and 2.
We have a feedback where someone started asking like, so when they're navigating the multiverse in Spider-Man and Avengers, what are they doing? Are they going back and forth on the sacred timeline? Are they, because that's not what it seemed like they were doing. But that's what I'm saying. Like Marvel, this was all cute when Marvel was like winking at the camera and being like, oh, this is Marvel time travel. Don't think too hard about it. But it's like, you've got a fucking multiverse now, man.
Now you're building things on it. Yeah. And
that you
have to have a foundation.
I think it's a fair question to be like, where did this Loki come from? And yeah, so I don't know, but it's.
I mean, this is the constant problem with comic books, right? You have to continually come up with new stories and bigger stories, and you got to go in there and delight people and surprise people. And by doing that, you create this spiderweb of stuff that you have to remember and address in every new thing you do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just not possible. And sometimes, they reboot it. Like, I think you're saying here, a complete reboot of the Marvel universe is probably what needed to happen here.
It might have happened, literally, but like they're not going to, I don't think
they won't play it like
go
that.
through the logical,
the next Thor movie is going to have all the context from the previous Thor movies. It's not like that's not going to happen. But I guess he could create a timeline where all that stuff did happen, right? As his new perfect
and I
sacred
frequently
timeline.
wish that
it's just
we had,
he was not in it.
And the other thing is, I also frequently wish, or I haven't frequently wished, I wish today that we had more time to think about this, because like we don't have screeners. I watched this for the first time last night. I watched it again this morning, and I have to kind of go. I wish I had a couple more days to kind of think about it, because I could see maybe talking myself into this, or like reading some, Reddit posts where people are like have these novel solutions to the bootstrapping, and but I just don't, like.
And with the type of storytelling they're doing, I'm not here saying this is bad. I think this is just the type of story they're doing, and it's done really well for what they're doing. I just like exploring the wrinkles in the new story.
I just wish I got a little teary-eyed during any of this stuff. I wish I'd connected just a little bit to where Loki's at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel you. So yeah, after this story that he tells Loki kind of gets an idea. He shakes Mobius' hands. All the timelines are destroyed again. And he goes back to Sylvie in Obi's shop and explains that he has to kill her to stop the destruction of everything. And she says, you know what? Sometimes it's okay to destroy something. And then he kind of finishes her sentence here. As long as you can replace it with something better, I guess. I don't know that that's her sentiment, but it's kind of the thing that he's adding to her sentiment, because he's still unwilling to go along with the idea she has.
Because here's the other thing is, like, I just can't get it. Maybe I'm not hard enough, but I'm not the guy who is going to fight to the death on a hopeless cause. If I'm convinced the cause is hopeless, then I'm going to try to stop fighting and try to continue living to get to the next time you can fight. Like Sylvie's whole thesis that, well, we can't get our way now, so everything has to die, and that's better. Death is. It's like,
I mean, we have a phrase for this. It's "live to fight another day."
Yeah, and sometimes you gotta like, I don't know, and I know that there's like, you could probably press me, and that philosophy wouldn't hold up on every situation, but it's just like, I just thought it was interesting that she's like, have you taken a straw poll for all the multiverse to see if everybody else is like on board with like we should die instead of having free will?
Well, she's a damaged Loki. I mean, she talks about it in this scene, how she grew up in apocalypses. Her life has been hell. I can understand why she wouldn't want to continue living it.
And sometimes people do wild stuff. Like that was one of the like issues I had in a 3-body problem. Like one character just did something so particularly heinous that it's like, God damn, you know, and like her condemning the entire multiverse to death just because from her point of view. Because that's the other thing is like, it's my understanding that we actually do live in her hell, that none of us do have free will and we're all kind of on these predetermined tracks. And
potentially,
like,
sure.
You know, so what? We should all just die? We should all just like jump into an antimatter beam or something? I don't know. I just like, I kind of like, I'm glad Loki had, because like if you shouldn't tear things down unless you have a plan to replace it with something better, or if the thing wasn't needed. But yeah, I'm glad Loki had a better of a. But you're right. I guess she is a particularly traumatized Loki too. So maybe she.
I think that's why it works on a character level. You know.
Yeah, very nihilist.
Yeah, it's just one of the many intricate pieces of this episode that I think works very well. Then Loki goes back to the moment before the destruction of the loom, and he goes out into the radiation and ends up destroying the loom. And then all the branches start dying off. And Loki opens a portal and goes through it. We're really like blitzing through this episode, but
I mean, there isn't a lot of it. It's a lot of visuals. It's a
lot of the same,
very epic and playing the Loki theme for all it's worth. This is where the real heavy parallels to the first Thor movie come, where, you know, like even where he says, you know, I know what kind of god I want to be for you, for all of us. That echoes what he said to Odin, that like, I can do this, Father. I can destroy the Jotunheim for you, for all of us, like all of that. This time it's like it's like I said, I really, really admired the tight parallel storytelling that they did for like what I consider a pretty throwaway early addition to the Marvel canon. You know, like Thor 1 is not my favorite Marvel film, but like it like I said, mechanically, intellectually, extremely satisfying.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't think of a better fate for this character.
And even like I also thinking like, well, this is what I wanted to do 3 episodes ago. He's an Asgardian god, just wait out in there in that radiation and manipulate time and space, and he fucking did it. Like, and it was like, he, and I don't think he could have done it 3 episodes ago. No. But
now he's able to control time. I think he gets hit with that time stuff, and it starts not knowing how to control it. He would just bleed away like everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, now he's leveled up. And I think like a lot of the stuff we've talked about in terms of structurally what they're doing, thematically what they're doing, come to fruition here, because you get a shot of one of the fundamental things about the universe, right? The nature of the universe itself represented in this Yggdrasil time tree thing, where he's gathered up all the branches and he's created himself. He's turned himself into a deific temporal loom. We've been talking about that, you know, how they represent those fundamental pieces of the universe. Here you get to see it.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Like but that's the thing is like I didn't know what I was doing until they literally rotated the tree into frame and it had roots but it was gorgeous. It was extremely beautiful. But it's like I'm trying to think if there's any other instance like where I've gone that far before I had no idea what the hero is doing. It's like, imagine if like Neo's chasing a phone call in the Matrix and you had no idea what he's trying to do, because they'd never introduced the idea of you getting out of the Matrix through a phone call before. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? And then he's got shot and he says no and all. I felt like that, where it's like, instead of me being like, oh, of course this is what he's doing and I got it. But I don't know, how do you tease like him making Yggdrasil out of the loom? I don't know. And it's like, that's one of the things, like, I hate to say that it's done bad if I couldn't think of a way to do it better. But I just felt like, I said, that first time I was just like really like frowny face lost what the fuck was happening. And then when I'm like, oh, the world tree. Oh, that's the reaction. I think they're more like, oh my God, of course, the world tree. And I don't know.
Yeah, my only real complaint is they don't give you time after you register what he's doing here to really live with it. You're just out of it again.
They turn the lights on the theater until you get the fuck out. Pick up your milk dud box and get out of here. Yeah, it's really...
Because once I realized what was happening, I was like, this is fucking powerful. This is a huge moment for not just this character, but the entire universe. And I really appreciated it, but we were on to the denouement after that. We were on to the after.
And even the real, like when you get the picture of Tom, like looking at all time and space, and he's got like... Even then, it's like, what is he thinking in that moment? Because he's no longer what I would consider a human being or has any kind of humanity. And he's like satisfied and happy, but sad. And it's one of those things where, but like, honestly, it's some kind of an unami flavor that only a chrono god can know and feel. And I just,
I think the wrong, I think it's tough. I think they're in a tough spot here because I want that last scene, that last shot of him sitting there with the tear coming down his face to be connected to this part of the episode. I want him to go up there, sit down, and I want the camera to push in on him, and I want to watch that tear well up and come down his cheek all in that one scene because I'm just figuring out what's happening. But they also want to leave you on a very final note for this character at the end of this episode. And I feel like they lose that if they don't give you one last shot of him. It's kind of the only thing they could go out on with this episode.
Yeah, I agree. It's that's what feels dissatisfying as we got to a spot where I don't think they could have done it better, and it was done really well. I just it left me a little cold. And I was so connected to the material up until that point. It was a little jarring for me. But yeah, I mean, like I my timeline is already full of people that I can see completely got this and loved it the way I did last episode. But you know, like that's where it's like I feel that's why I always feel kinship with Jim. It's like I know that I got the same breaking points. They're just a couple meters beyond where he breaks, you know, on these different things.
I broke in episode 5. He broke in episode 6.
I broke in the middle of this episode.
So yeah, let's talk about the after, I guess.
And I just wish I knew what he was doing. Like, and I know it's like he's doing unfathomable God stuff, but I felt like I could explain up through like halfway through. But like when he's just like seeing these times and he's grabbing this one and grabbing that one and charging it with green stuff, and then he's like, then these staircase appear out of nowhere, and it's like, is this like a Asgardian socket? Is this like a play? And it's also like the fact that it was recognizably the end of time. You know, like a primordial end of time. Like it wasn't like an Asgardian. Like this is a vacant post. It's been vacant since Odin disappeared. It is just a weird. I don't know. It just. I don't know. I just wish I knew what he was doing. Like when he's grabbing a line and charging it with green magic. What is he doing? And when he gets to the top of the staircase and he just kind of like shakes out the timeline like it's a rug, and it turns like I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, now is not the time for mystery. Now is the time to play with all cards face up.
And it's taking him a lot of they're doing the things I like where it's like he's yelling and moaning and groaning because it's clearly costing him a great deal in terms of energy and effort and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know what the hell he's doing.
I like how it feels on this walk that as you know, his clothes are ripped off by the time radiation, the temporal radiation, and he gradually turns into Loki the god. I like how it becomes easier for him with every step he takes.
Yeah, because he's becoming, right? Is it a problem that Tom Hiddleston as civilian Loki looks infinitely cooler than Tom Hiddleston as ascended god Loki?
His crown is so stupid. I hate it. Look, there are a lot of things that I hate the visual design of in Marvel.
But it's like
it's one of the sillier ones.
He looks like Legolas in pajamas with a weird horn helmet, and because I've never really minded the horn helmet. I like that kind of like really stylized.
Boots, God damn it,
man! The slippers are not working for me. Those slippers gotta go. Those those aren't standing up to temporal radiation. Come on.
Yeah. Look, you didn't put Hugh Jackman in the spandex. You don't have to put Loki in his comic book garb.
I was looking for Loki to be a lot ascended Loki to be like awe-inspiring, and like I said, he looked like he was wearing pajamas, like elfin pajamas,
and everything that is happening around him is so awe-inspiring that by contrast it looks even sillier. But whatever. Boy, that's a minor complaint.
It is.
Everything else in this scene is pretty awesome.
Yeah, again, I cannot say enough about the... It's almost worth surprising me with what the fuck they are doing to actually reveal the world tree, because it's just lets your background. It's gorgeous. It's so cool.
They just wholesale lifted Stranger Things portal design, didn't they? They just turned it green. I feel like they just took a screenshot of the upside down portal and made it green.
Yeah. But then again, like what? Yeah, like how? What did he do? He ripped a dimension to the end of time from the.
It could look like anything. You don't have to rip off upside down. Come on. You're so creative with what a time branch disintegrating looks like. Show me something I haven't seen before for the portal. Would
any of this stuff be happening if they hadn't rebooted God of War to a Celtic religion 7 years ago? Because that's the other thing I wondered about.
Oh, you think so?
It's like, yeah, definitely. There's definitely those in. I mean, it's Thor and Loki, right?
Sure.
And like the Marvel is, they've always had the screaming goats and stuff in the lore for a long time. So I'm sure they had Yggdrasil there at some point, and the Bifrost and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, just when do you roll those out?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's appropriately epic, though.
It sure is.
Pretty goddamn good way to go out for this series, I gotta say. Let's talk about the after. We're back at the TVA in this. I don't know what timeline to call this. It's like the sacred timeline. Everything we know from the sacred timeline has happened here, but I don't think we would call this the sacred timeline.
You can't, because it's not many. It's the sacred timelines, the infinite, the finite curve of the infinite sacred timeline.
so we're on the timeline we're on. We're seeing the timeline they're showing us. I don't know what to call it.
And the TVA is outside of time, so I think the TVA still works regardless.
True. But yeah, B-15 is running things, and Miss Minutes has been rebooted. All that stuff has happened. They're keeping an eye now on the He Who Remains variants, making sure he doesn't get out of control. Mobius apparently requested his own variant case file and tells B-15 that he's leaving. Now, this is interesting to me. Isn't that Mobius the one who was pulled from his timeline by Loki and remembers his life before?
I don't think so.
Then which Mobius is
this? Loki jumped previous to him scattering the multiverse for these variants, then collecting them like the Avengers.
But didn't all the Miss Minutes reboot happen? No, I guess it happened before that.
Yeah, it did. So like I think that works. And there's also this clever the case file she's showing about the Kang variant is essentially the events of Ant-Man. And 616, that's Marvel's like prime timeline. Like everything happens on Earth 616. Like this is clearly referencing the Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, which everyone acts like is a shitty movie. I don't understand why. I thought that movie was as roughly good as every other kind of like.
It's because MODOK sucks.
But I don't know.
Because I hate MODOK.
I like that funny stuff. I loved in the last Thor where they had the screaming goats. Man, the screaming goats killed me every single time.
That was funny too. I thought that was funny.
So sometimes when they just like nakedly put some of the weirdest shit on weirder shit of the Marvel canon out there, and it's like they couldn't have done that back in like 2008, but now they can. But I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe MODOK is what's killing them.
I don't know. Look, there's a lot of stuff I don't like about it. MODOK's one.
Also, the TVA didn't do shit about this Kang variant. Scott did. So it's like they're taking credit for like, oh yeah, just maybe Owen Wilson's is in the background tying his shoelaces together or something. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
But like the TVA's taking credit for Avenger shit here. Don't like it.
So yeah, B-15. He tells B-15 he's leaving, and she says, "Well, you're welcome back anytime you want to come back." And I guess if He Who Remains gets out of control, they'll probably just prune him. I assume. That's why they're keeping tabs on him. I don't think they would just like let a dangerous He Who Remains continue to live.
Yeah, it's hard for me to understand that Sylvie would be cool with a TVA that's sole purpose is finding all the Victor Timeleys when they're 9 years old and making sure that they don't get a comprehensive math and science education.
Well, fuck
Is what
Sylvie. This is better.
Yeah, it's like
this
this
is
is
the
like,
better
yeah.
thing that they replaced it with. You know?
Yeah, it's like if
we
the
destroyed the thing you didn't like and we made it better, but still not perfect.
Yeah, if you had a 1950s TVA that's constantly combing the timeline to make sure Adolf Hitler doesn't go to art school, it's like maybe, that's you're definitely fucking with his free will, but also, that's not what I'm saying. There's like a tinge. This is like a timeline where everyone gets what they want, and it's not.
No, it's not 100%. Yeah,
but it's probably the closest.
And that's the whole point of Mobius's speech, right? Like you just choose your burden.
You choose your burden
rather than pruning trillions or an infinite number of people. Literally, he's potentially pruning one child.
And you develop scar tissue, so Disney can never hurt the place that they, you get calloused over those your tender heartstrings.
Yeah, maybe that was the problem. Maybe you have too much scar tissue, man.
It's true.
You weren't feeling
can't feel anything.
Disney pulling your emotional strings.
Yeah.
So Obi writes a second edition of the TVA handbook, and a young Victor Timely never gets that book. And then Renslayer wakes up to find herself exiled in Alias domain. Eliath? I don't remember how you say this.
I think it's Eliath. That's what they're clearly hinting at.
This is not some kind of tease for Renslayer, coming back and fucking with the status quo, the new status quo here. This is saying she's completely fucked, right?
I mean, we know you can survive a Eliath attack, and several Lokis do.
If you're a god, you can.
But I think Disney's starting to learn their lesson that we don't need a Agatha Harkness spinoff. We don't need a Renslayer spinoff. Like if you if you come up with a sick ass idea for Renslayer spinoff, then do it. But don't do it just because you introduced a character that has a Wikipedia that has a Marvelpedia entry. They just have to stop doing that. And I think they are stop doing that.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope this is them saying
love Catherine Hahn. Would love to see a bitchy Agatha vamping her way through a season, but if you got an hour and a half of ideas and 6 episodes to do it, just don't fucking do it. Or do a movie. Yeah. Do a movie. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. And then we go over to Mobius, who watches himself play with his kids, and Sylvie shows up long enough to say she has no idea where she's going, and he's just gonna stay in this moment for a while. Let time pass, as he says. I like that. And then we get that final shot that we talked about already, where Loki sits alone on his throne as the actual timekeeper, the god of time, the deific temporal loom, whatever you want to call it, with having made for him an ultimate sacrifice.
Kind of reminds me of OB at the start of this, where it's he was doing everything for everyone else and didn't have any time for. But the other thing is Loki could pause time anytime he wanted to and go hang out with his friends. But I don't think he does, because I also think that's the thing I haven't decided. Is Loki? It has Loki lost his humanity? Is it one of those things where it's he's got the vestiges, but the idea that he might want he might have the power and ability to every once in a while pause time and go hang out with his friends and catch up, or now that he
science
can see...
brain disengaged, because that concept is insane to me. But sure,
or the idea that
time.
He's also gets to watch infinite varieties of his friends, but also that means he's seen infinite varieties of his friends die. The amount of scar tissue he's developing as being this bit. So it's I just feel it's one of those things where it's like Frodo at the end of Lord of the Rings. He saved the Shire for everyone but himself. Mm-hmm. It's a bittersweet ending, which is great. We love those I really wish. I really wish the connection got made there between my heart and my head, and it just didn't. But gotcha. I've said that a million times in this podcast already. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of the episode, or do we want to get right to feedback now?
No, let's get to feedback.
Marvel@baldmove.com is how you send us feedback on the Loki show. Jim, are we coming back next week for a Loki send-off? I feel unless we get just a ton of feedback that illuminates things in a way that makes our coverage better? Probably not. And we haven't gotten a ton of feedback on Loki, even though the stats wise it's been performing well. It just hasn't been a lot to say. So like I'm kind of content of letting Loki this be the last we talk about Loki. But if we get 30 insightful emails, we might come back. Or the other thing, if in the next week they announce a Loki season 3,
yeah, I would come back to talk about that.
Because that it would be bad. Like I could see a Loki season 3 greenlit 3 years from now after they do whatever they want to do with Loki in the multiverse movie.
Yeah.
But he has to be depowered.
Next year?
This Loki you couldn't tell a story with. You told the story you can tell with this Loki. This Loki now is a fundamental constant of the universe. You can't make a movie about plank time, Marvel at baldmove.com. First up, Zach says, I guess before, since a lot of people probably turn off at this point, just let you know, we are not shutting down because Loki's going off the air. Far from it. We got stuff going on all winter. We're about to start coverage of Fargo and True Detective. We just had a great movie, The Holdover, we covered last night. We're going to be looking at the Napoleon and Silent Night coming up. We do stuff all year round in terms of television and film. If you'd like to follow us on our journey, follow us on social media as a start. All social media is at BaldMove. Of course, we're on TikTok at BaldestMove. And if you'd like to get more of what we're doing minus ads, I don't blame you. Ads suck. Support.baldmove.com is how you join the club and get ad-free feeds and much more. All right, first up is Zach. He says, I want to add to the discussion you guys were having about Loki and Sylvie's relationship. When Loki and Sylvie are at the bar and she keeps pressing him for what his real motivation is, he settles on he wanted to save his friends and find out where he belongs. I feel like they stopped shy of one more layer, which would have been the actual truth. If Sylvie kept pressing him, I fully expected his next answer would have been, I want you, all right? I want to be with you. When she said, we're all writing our own stories now, I wanted him to sheepishly ask, can we write ours together? I'm picking up on a lot of things Loki isn't saying, but the writers seem to want us to believe he's at least considering saying, primarily that he does still love Sylvie, and that's what's really been driving him. Is there any there, or am I just seeing what I want because this show has successfully turned me into a Loki fanboy / apologist?
I was going to say, we found another shipper. Found another... Silky. I was right there with you, man.
Silky.
I was expecting this last episode to be a lot about that. To be him finally figuring out once and for all, both of them figuring out once and for all that they wanted each other. Nope. Doesn't seem to be what it's about at all. It's a more universal love that Loki has here.
Yep, it's more self-love and self-acceptance and going to war with yourself over principles. The romantic angle was, I don't know if it was ever there or if it's just like you see two good-looking, charismatic people and you're like, why not, right?
It was there last season for sure. It's just they got off that train at some point.
But were they trying to make it like a Luke and Leia thing where there's clearly love and connection they both felt, but they didn't understand the context, and properly once they did, it's like, oh, well, no, we don't want to fuck each other because...
Potentially, or their decision at the end of season 1 to kind of say, no, these are two very different Lokis was their ultimate goal with that. One.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's true after this season.
All the shippers, we have to retire to the internet fan fiction / communities because there's no home for us here, I don't think.
Yeah.
Tobias says, I have no idea how they pull it off, but I'm rewatching all the episodes tonight, and I'm fascinating lens through which to view the series occurred to me. That Mobius somehow remembers. He never gives a straight answer about his life, and as a father myself, I thought if I had to play along for events to unfold properly to return to my children, I'd look and sound a lot like him. Even when he slaps Brad for telling him to wake up, it feels like a jet ski salesman who is whisked away to save the universe, and he just wants to see his boys so badly. I don't know, it just seems like it adds a bunch of hindsight weight to every line he's delivered. What do you think about Tobias's theory that actually Mobius was aware of everything going on all the time?
I mean, on the face of it, it doesn't seem to be true. They didn't give me anything this final episode that was a big reveal on that, so
it seemed hard to
swear.
True,
but I could also see if you're looking around the edges that could have been the case, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just not the story they told.
It's just hard to square that, like, if nothing else, the final moments of this where Mobius is talking to B-15 and he says, I just want to see what I've been, sacrificing. Well, if he knew, like, he might be like, I need to get back to my boys. But, like, that man doesn't know what the fuck he was doing. I don't think he knew he sold jet skis and had boys, Mm-hmm. And I think, like, like Jim almost fell foul of this fallacy that the last time we saw Mobius, he had all that foreknowledge. And we didn't track the fact that we've jumped way before the timeline where that happened. So that never happens. Loki never goes on a jaunt with his friends across the multiverse to try to get all these variants. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Amber from California says, I usually listen to your podcast while driving. Your voices calm me and help keep my road rage to a minimum. I'm glad we can keep the streets of California from running red with more blood than they do. That's nice.
Look out,
That's
jogger.
Nice.
Oh. To your left.
Funny enough, I was listening to the science fiction episode while waiting for my sweet tea in a McDonald's drive-thru. As soon as you mentioned the Happy Meal Loki toy, I looked over and see this. She attached a picture. Apparently, McDonald's is running a Disney promotion where they're selling little plastic figures of different Marvel and Disney movies, and they have like RFID chips where you can set them on your phone and they tell a story. And the one they're featuring is Loki.
Wow. Okay.
Isn't that yeah. I don't know about the pedestrian, but you might want to watch that you're in a simulation, Amber. This is like, are you actually a real person? Or this seems very conveniently narratively driven. I don't know. She says she can't wait for our Severance coverage. Me too.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. I hope Severance isn't ruined by the time it's taken off, because god damn, that show is number one, the bullet, the thing I was most excited to watch, and I can barely remember it now. I have to rewatch the whole thing before it comes back out.
Oh yeah.
Probably podcast the whole thing too if I want to try to twist Jim's arm on that.
I don't think you'll have to twist it very hard.
Perfect. Even better. Lucas from Germany says, I've been wondering for some time what the relationship between the timelines from Loki and the Marvel multiverse of the mainline movies. Are they the same thing? Are all the Loki timelines including in one universe? Or is the entire multiverse included in the sacred timeline? More precisely, can the TIMPads also open portals between different universes, i.e. from Tom Holland's Spider-Man to Tobey Maguire? Or the other way around, could Miss America from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness travel between timelines? Since there appears to be one sacred timeline but lots of equivalently valid universes, I have a feeling that they are not the same, but would be interested in your points of view. Also, I did not watch the latest Ant-Man, so maybe it was explained there more clearly. Or maybe we are not supposed to think about this too deeply. I think that's the true answer. I don't think there's any answers in Ant-Man Quantumania. And I was pondering that myself. Like, when the Hulk went back to talk to the Ancient One and try to get the Infinity Stone, and she knocked him out of his body. If we stayed on that timeline another hour, would jackbooted thugs from the TVA come and destroy that? Because my understanding is there's one timeline that's constantly trying to branch off. And every time it does, the TVA is there with the pruning shears.
Yeah, keep it on track.
So that's how our Loki got to this series. The Avengers went back in the sacred timeline, fucked around with it. It caused a variant of Loki to go through a time portal and escape the sacred timeline, which was causing a branch. And instead of purging him, they brought him on the inside to help him find the other Loki variant.
Yeah.
So I think that gives them the freedom to fuck around with other alternate timelines, with the understanding that as soon as the Avengers leave with what they want, the TVA shows up behind them and blows it up. I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't know that actually tracks. And then when you get to the Miles Morales of all of it, I don't know. Because then, how can you have a council of Spider-Men from all the variants of all the different multiverses, and the TVA never put a kibosh on that shit?
Yeah, it's a damn good question.
How can Tobey Maguire...
Is that taking place after this, where Loki is doing... Or, after, whatever that means in this context. Is that taking place after Loki has become the temporal loom himself.
So all of the Tom
and he's allowing
Hollands,
these
No Way Home and all of the all of
It
all of that
literally
shit is
can't,
happening in the
right?
Yggdrasil timeline. They could just say
well,
like, yeah, all
can
that
it
happened
because of
post.
all the Spider-Man rap-in with Avengers and stuff? I feel like
Yeah.
it can't.
Yeah. No, I
because he's got to get the suit from Tony Stark and all this stuff, and I don't.
It's hard to resolve these conundrums, I think.
Really hard, yeah.
But there could be. I mean, there might be a slick solution that they already have at Marvel, or it could be just like
Or
just
all
don't think
of
too
these
hard
are on
about it
different
'cause it's
timelines, and none of them actually connect because Loki.
like there's a bigger structure that's outside of Kang in a sacred timeline where there's like a multiverse of multiverses, and it's
Sure.
only the one multiverse. But yeah, that's
right. Then that's just a joke. Like,
it's
what about the
warts.
multiverse outside of that multiverse? Right? None of this matters because it's only in the one multiverse.
Yeah, welcome to Star Trek, where the warp core breaches don't matter. You know, like you can't come up with a single cohesive Star Trek timeline. It's not possible.
Yeah,
If it ever was, like past season 1 of Star Trek, the old series, it's not now.
No,
like there
no,
are
that Leonard Nimoy line, the Spock line, just destroyed
the
that.
best you can ever get is what your fellow nerds accept as like the mainline canon.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever debated those nerds, that's a hard thing to nail them down on. So, Zeke is up last. He says, rewatching a show from last season, I gleaned that He Who Remains didn't do anything, but rather in a not unlike Harry Seldon from Foundation psychohistory way, He Who Remains knows that's inevitable that there will be another variant to take his place. Might take a millennia, an epoch, or several multiversal wars, but eventually it doesn't matter. Another Kang variant will inevitably take his place. In the last episode's podcast, you're speculating on why he let himself be killed or let the sacred timeline die. Funny enough, Jim mentions it's not the what or the why, it's the who, and I think he's right. I think in the next coming movies, whether it be Deadpool or Fantastic Four or whoever, that someone is going to actually have been the cause of the sacred timeline ending, and this whole show will get someone who take He Who Remains place at the end of time.
I think it did.
Whether it isn't another Kang or Loki or some other entity, the person that we meet later on in MCU, I bet this show is very closely tied to the MCU in general. So I read this because you seem to have gotten all the internet points, except for.
No, I think the context in which I was mentioning the who was in the context of fixing the loom, right? Like it wasn't the what or the why or the when or how. It's that he needed to go out there and do it himself. And technically I'm right about that, but ultimately it doesn't matter because it didn't fix anything.
Well, it did. It did. Like, he literally replaced, instead of Kang sitting on the throne, he's sitting on the throne. Instead of a loom, he's got a tree.
That's a who too far. That's not the who I was.
You're right. That's a lot of what. That's a lot of what. That's a lot of what.
Well, it's also like, oh, my who actually did come true. He did go out there and do it. But then there was another who beyond that, which was, who is the He Who Remains? And that, I think that makes sense. Everything you're saying there happened this episode, right? Loki is now He Who Remains. He's sitting in that position.
I need Horton in here to help me keep track. There's just too many who's I'm hearing.
I hear you.
I just walked out of the Marvels. Zeke continues. And I've been waiting for Marvel to tie movie release dates with show finale dates. I've read reviews for Marvels, and I understand how the film and shows have not been the best the past couple of years. But I still think the best of the best will come together. Deadpool will walk into Loki. Loki will show up in the Marvels. Galactus will make an appearance in Marvels or Deadpool, etc. As for who, I bet that some of the things happening in MCU will become the who as to why the sacred timeline ended and why the Kang variants are coming. The reason the sacred timeline is going to inevitably end is cause of what is happening in Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Marvels, etc. Your thoughts? So there's this one. So there's two. I don't know exactly what you're getting at the second thing, but the first point of like that Marvel could have something in their hands where you could literally have a show wrap up its finale the week that a movie based on that kicks off. And like, ooh, Marvel's really got something there. The problem is I don't think Marvel's got that juice anymore. Like if they had the thing ready to go for Endgame, I think you would have had something. But now it's like, I don't think this is a misunderstanding of like someone that's extremely into Marvel stuff makes about everybody else. So like most people are not watching these shows the day they release, and certainly wouldn't have a movie ticket ready to go that night for like, oh, I just finished Loki. Now it's time to go to my 7:45 viewing of Loki Unfucks the World Tree. It's like, that's not how 95% of us engage. Like if you're listening to a podcast about these series, you're already into one tenth of the 1% that's most into this stuff.
Sure.
So for
It'd be
Marvel,
a cool super fan experience, but yeah, not how most people.
and I think of Marvel, like that's the problem is like it seems to me that Marvel's best play would have been to just chill for a couple of years after Endgame. Like take their time, get Disney Plus going with all the kids stuff and all the family entertainment, get all the Marvel movies there so people can rewatch them endlessly, get all the Star Wars stuff there, but don't go for the next phase. Don't be like, oh, I got this television network, I got to fill it full of Marvel content. Think about, but like, that's not.
They're probably thinking about it as a snowball, right? Like we want to keep this momentum. If we
Yes.
stop, we die.
But it's
we're a
simpler than
shark.
that. Every corporation that's publicly traded thinks the one thing is like, here's our pie. How can we make it bigger next year?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we take the pie off the shelf for a couple of years, that will never occur
No.
to them
No.
because the pie is so big and it could get bigger.
That's what I mean.
And
Yeah. If we've got this momentum, what if we pushed it even further? We could get bigger.
Yeah.
We could grow our profits more.
So we had like this weird aberration, the golden age of television, where things were allowed to have like their natural conclusions and like told stories, and they didn't like, when I was a kid, it was commonplace for shows to continue until they sucked and then they were canceled, and no one really watched the last season or two, so no one really cared. We're in a different territory now, and like we course corrected back with all this Marvel, Star Wars, DC crap, where now it's making so much money that they're just going to keep doing it until it doesn't. And they're not going to get good unless they're willing to let these fields go fallow and recharge creatively. We're guaranteed all of this is going to end badly, because that's the only reason anything ever ends, right?
Yeah.
You don't break up with your boyfriend because you love them so much. It's because the shit's run its course, man. It's time for it to end. It was good. It's now bad. And that's where we're going to be unless they're willing to take a step back.
Well, and like you said, the context for them is, why would we? Like,
Right,
if
they
it's
have
going to die, it's going to
shareholders.
die. We're not going to take it off the shelf prematurely. We're going to milk it
Yeah.
for all it's worth and then move on to the next thing we can milk.
Yeah. Our film division made $17 billion last year, and we've got it budgeted to make $23 billion this year, and we've already spent $7 billion in production. So like, yeah, there is no brakes on this train. So,
And there's no
That's what I'm
incentive to
saying.
stop until it stops making money.
I'm just saying, like, just telling you now, to the 20-year-old diehard Marvel people that have grown up with this your whole life, I envy the position you're in, but I just need you to know that this is going to end badly for you. It's the only way. Like, unless you just watch Marvel movies until the day you die at 75 and are satisfied with whatever they throw out, like, it's going to end badly for you. You're going to break up with this franchise because they do stupid shit, because they'll have to,
Yeah,
because
they
they won't
have to.
stop. They won't stop where it still makes sense.
They can't stop.
Anyway, that's Loki. That's low. We're all going to
wouldn't it
be
be better? Let me
we're all
paint
going
a
to be
picture.
sitting alone on our throne watching Disney Plus until the end of time. It's the only fate we have.
Let me paint a picture where the profits don't stop and the love never ends and they never kill the thing. What if instead of one property or two properties that you tried to milk for everything they're worth, you had 15 different types of properties that you didn't milk as hard? What if you milked each one a 15th of the way you're milking the Marvel stuff? And boy,
Yeah,
wouldn't that be
crop
great?
rotation?
You could
crop
put
rotation. Yeah.
Yeah. What if you planted soybeans and then corn the next year and then back to soybeans, huh?
But hear me out, Jim. What
Yeah.
if we bought 15 fields and we grew them all at once? Can you imagine the money we'd make?
Unlimited profits.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Even if you could get that system going for 5 years, someone would take over that would be like,
Yeah. And they would say, "Oh, I see an opportunity here. Let's
We
exploit
can make
it
15
even harder."
fields and grow them all at once and flood. Yeah,
and they
they
kill the
won't-
whole damn thing. Yeah.
And these are supposed
just
to be
how
people that went to
capitalism
business
works.
school, like, right?
You would think so. But it's all short-term thinking is the problem.
Yeah.
Even in this, that's the thing that blows my mind. Even in this long-term creative thinking that they're doing, it still feels like they're running it like a short-term business. Because you have to. I mean, that's where the profit.
It's post in like post in game. They've lost the plot. It does feel like, and there's tons of there's tons of print being written about that very fact. Like the internet's been awash. Everything. I feel like ever since Joanna Robinson's MCU book came out, it's been open season on what the fuck is wrong with the like. Star Wars has been on fire for a while. DC has never gotten their plane to take off. Marvel's been the one good thing, and now it's like you're shitting the money bed. What's going on? And we're going to probably get a lot of
exceptions.
That in the years ahead.
I mean, I've enjoyed the Spider-Man movies. I really enjoyed Loki. Enjoyed Ant-Man 3, except for MODOK. Fuck him.
Even as Fox was running the X-Men to the ground, they were still capable of doing Logan and Deadpool, which are some of the best entries in there. But
yeah, but they also did Apocalypse.
Oh, Jesus Christ, they did. Yeah, they somehow made Oscar Isaac look uncool.
Yeah, and Phoenix. They made Phoenix uncool.
Oh man, yeah, they just the dark.
Jesus,
we got raw. They'll be able to run that back. It's been 20 years. No one remembers Famke Janssen drowning in a Canadian lake. Or we're good to go. We're gonna do
wasn't
Dark
it
Phoenix
Sansa?
Right.
At this point, didn't they do a movie with her?
Oh,
it was
right.
Really
we got a
bad?
different. They did 2 bites of that apple, didn't they?
Yeah, they really did.
Third bite's the charm.
Sure, that's the one where you eat the worm, like the tequila bottle.
Here's a choose your own multiverse adventure. Send us a lot of high quality feedback, and we might do a Loki add-on edition. But I'm betting we won't. I'm betting we're gonna chill here until the next big Marvel project tempts us, which I don't even know what that is. I was really looking forward to Loki. I'm still super interested in like the Spider-Man of everything and the Miles Morales stuff. But man, I just don't know about the next Disney Plus thing that comes out. Stay tuned to Pulp. Stay tuned to Bald Move Pulp if you want to see what we do next with the comic book move. And again, like we're on social media everywhere at Bald Move, TikTok at Baldest Move. And if you want even more Bald Move with ad-free feeds, check out support.baldmove.com. Otherwise, thank you. I've actually had a pleasure. This has been a really fun show to cover. It didn't quite connect with me at the end, but it's still the best thing Disney Plus has ever done by a huge margin in my estimation. So we really appreciate you guys following along with us. Hope that we can catch you again over the holidays and in the new year. But if not, we'll see you whenever we see you. Until that time, I'm A.Ron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.